age. If he says to his son, "You're a clever boy, you're a strong boy, I'm going to get you a little truck so you can play with," but to his daughter, he says, "You're a pretty girl, let me get you this pink dress, I'm going to get you a doll." Is that fundamentally the problem here, the different perceptions, the different ways that boys and girls are treated from such a young age?
I think that's definitely one of the problems. I think also the scenario you've just depicted is actually really common. It's probably something I experienced myself when I was about 5 or 6, and it's one I continue to see today. I think the problem is just, there's so many things. It is the way parents talk to children, as you said, that the boy's told to be strong, clever, and I even sometimes have to control myself when I'm praising my young nieces to not tell them they're pretty. I just think it's become so ingrained in us that it's become a natural thing to do. But it's also, things they see just externally, whether it's toys or media, and the fact that, girls are given dolls. We've seen lots of instances of gendered clothing and toys, in toy stores, the pink aisle and the blue aisle. I think all of these things combined do kind of give children the idea that they've got certain roles and possessions to fill in life.
Peter Lloyd, do you think we're reading a bit too much into this? Is it way too early to make these distinctions between boys and girls? I mean, surely we should wait till later life, shouldn't we?
Yeah, this study is laughably bad. It's not robust in the slightest. I mean, it is literally a case of feelings over fact. Girls outperform boys in virtually every academic domain. So whatever they feel aged 6 is irrelevant because it doesn't hold them back. Instead, this study and others like it should be focusing on the huge education gap which sees boys, particularly white working class boys, the worst performing demographic in schools. But of course it doesn't, because the author behind it is an ardent feminist who went out to try and prove a foregone conclusion. This is ridiculous. We shouldn't even be talking about it.
Radhika, see you smiling, see you shaking your head?
Yeah, I completely disagree with Peter. Firstly, I completely accept that girls do tend to go on and do better academically at secondary school and university, but then when they enter the workplace, that's when you see the problem. You see a massive gender pay gap, you see girls not going into STEM careers, so science, technology and maths.
Fake news.
And sure they're doing well academically, but I think what this whole gender stereotypes thing does is it creates a lack of confidence, and it makes girls feel on some level that even though they're academically capable of doing everything a boy is, that they've got different paths to follow. And, it's something I've seen in personal experience, and there's studies to prove it as well.
Peter, as Radhika was saying, I mean, in later life, you do see that there is a lack of women in professions such as engineering, in mathematics. So can we draw a direct line between young children, the way they are treated at such an early age, and the fact that we do have a lack of women in professions such as the ones I've just mentioned?
No, this is the same old lazy left rhetoric that we hear all the time. Look, statistical disparities don't necessarily mean that there is discrimination at play. There are elemental differences between the genders, and women and men like to make different choices as a whole. Not all, some, but you cannot say that there is discrimination at play. Look at women in other sciences, and such as biology and veterinary science. They dominate these areas. They also dominate medicine. So to say that they're being repressed from the age of 6 is absolutely bonkers. And if we're saying that there is a problem and it happens in primary schools, well, the majority of primary school teachers are female, so this is something that clearly female teachers are doing to pupils, so it's got nothing to do with men and this mythical patriarchy myth.
How do you say that some people don't have privilege when you basically just said that trans people aren't valid? They're not a thing. They're just girls pretending to be boys or boys pretending to be girls.
Okay. Oh, someone's excited. Okay.
It's biological, but gender is a completely different thing.
No, gender is not disconnected from sex. So.
It's not completely disconnected, but it's still a cultural thing. It's still from society.
Okay. No, it is not in the mind. Okay, you're not a man if you think you're a man. And I didn't say pretending, or if I did, I shouldn't have said pretending. Let me amend.
You said playing.
Okay, I said a boy who thinks he's a girl. That's the usual phraseology I use. Not playing. I usually say a boy who thinks he's a girl or a girl who thinks he's a boy, which is technically what we're talking about here. As far as the actual psychological issues at play, it used to be called gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder. Now they call it gender dysphoria. The idea that sex or gender are malleable is not true. Okay, and I'm not denying your humanity if you're a transgender person. I am saying that you are not the sex to which you claim to be. You're still a human being, and you're a human being with an issue that I wish you Godspeed in dealing with in whatever way you see fit. But if you are going to dictate to me that I'm supposed to pretend that men are women and women are men, no. My answer is no. I'm not going to modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are.
Damn! Okay, but you're still saying these kids should like not be accepted because they don't really fit in either place? They can't just like...
I'm saying that the Boy Scouts have a standard. You must be a biological boy to be a Boy Scout. You have to be a boy to be a Boy Scout.
Where's that written though? Okay.
In the name Boy Scouts. Because this is a very because for all of human history, boy meant boy and girl meant girl. Boy did not mean girl. And if I call you a moose, are you suddenly a moose? Okay, if I redefine our terms. No, yes, that's right. Men and women are a completely different thing. This is true. Have you ever met a man or a woman? They're completely different.
You can't just say you're a cat. It's not a thing. It's genders. It's not saying you're.
Okay, why is that? I don't understand. Why? Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, I won't ask you how old. I will ask you how old you are. Okay, because you're young enough that it's probably not insulting to ask you. So.
I'm 22, so I'm probably young and naive, right?
No. Why aren't you 60? Why aren't you 60?
Because it.
And why can't you identify as 60? What is the problem with you identifying as 60?
Because it's not the same as gender. You can't just...
You're right. Age is significantly less important than gender. You can't magically change your gender. You can't magically change your sex. You can't magically change your age.
You can still legally change it. People recognize
You can't legally change your age, by the way.
Obviously. You can change your name, you can change your sex, you can change your identity.
Just because you can do things legally doesn't mean that they are correct biologically. You could do lots of things in the past that were incorrect biologically and correct legally. For a long period of time in the United States, sterilization of the mentally ill took place. That didn't make it okay. Skinner versus Oklahoma. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote the decision.
Right. I still don't understand how you're accepting these children that are...
It's not a matter of open-minded and accepting. I want them to get treatment that they see fit, but that's not involving me. The idea behind the transgender movement as a civil rights movement is the idea that all of their problems would just go away if I would pretend that they were the sex to which they claim membership. That's nonsense. The transgender suicide rate is 40%. It is 40%. And according to the Anderson School at UCLA, it makes no difference. There's a study that came out last year. It makes no difference, virtually no difference, statistically speaking, as to whether people recognize you as a transgender person or not, which suggests there's a very high comorbidity between transgenderism, whatever that mental state may be, and suicidality. That has nothing to do with how society treats you.
Do you think it could be because of they're bullied at school?
No, I don't think that. I do not think that the discrepancy. I do not think the discrepancy. First of all, I'm against bullying of any sort. Okay, the idea that somebody would beat somebody up is terrible. Okay, as somebody who's viciously bullied in high school, I'm not a fan of bullying. But the idea that the normal suicide rate across the United States is 4%. The suicide rate in the transgender community is 40%. The idea that 36% more transgender people are committing suicide because people are mean to them is ridiculous. It's not true, and it's not backed by any science that anyone can cite.
Your op-ed that you wrote for this paper appears to suggest the Republicans at NYU should be sanctioned in some way for daring to have Gavin McInnes on campus, and your justification for that is that his views are so beyond the pale, beyond, as you put it, our democratic values, that we shouldn't be allowed to hear them.
See, Tucker, what I really don't want you to do is do what the student paper at NYU did, which is put words in my mouth and change my words.
Let's cut to the
let
point.
me
Tell
sort of
us
tell
what
my
you
own
think.
story. Is that okay?
Yes, with haste.
So what I'm trying to, one of the sentences that was actually taken out, which made me very angry, was the question: does the university, is it obliged to protect the speech of someone who comes on campus and advocates and recruits for Al-Qaeda?
Okay.
What do you think about that?
I don't know that is at question here. We're talking about Gavin McInnes.
It's exactly the question that I want to raise, which was suppressed. So I'm bringing that question. Another question that was altered is the question: should the university protect someone who comes on campus and advocates vigilante violence against police officers who've killed civilians and have not been indicted? Is that protected? Should that be protected on campus?
That was, I mean, look.
That was suppressed on, by those editors. And I want a place where I can sort of have this conversation. What do you think about this? Should someone who actually advocates killing police officers be allowed to debate on a campus, or to no, not even debate, to sort of come on and say what they believe on campus?
If you are asking me a question, then let me answer
it.
This is not a question for college administrators to decide. It's been decided by the Supreme Court in a case called Brandenburg versus Ohio, 1969, the last big free speech case. And the upshot of it is that advocating violence is indeed protected speech. And of course, politicians do it all the time. We ought to bomb this country or bomb that country. Advocating violence, that's protected by the First Amendment. What is not protected is inciting violence, imminent violence, destruction, or mayhem. I cannot say, go smash the windows of that liquor store. So here's my point. Anything Gavin McInnes conceivably said or would have said on your campus is protected speech. Now, if you'd taken 10 minutes to Google this, you'd know that. And so there's really not a close call here. What he's doing is protected by the First Amendment to the Constitution. So for you to say that people should be sanctioned,
do you think people should recruit for Al-Qaeda on a college campus?
Well, of course, I'm completely against Al-Qaeda.
Okay, do you think they should be protected by administrators on a campus?
I think people ought to be able to express their political views, no matter how repugnant to you or me or anyone else, as long as they, in accordance with the Supreme Court decision from 1969, are not inciting imminent violence. I believe I'm understanding that correctly, and I think that you should, and I think the college administrators should.
I do believe
understand
that. I absolutely do believe that. But I also believe that there are arguments, there are points to be made that are beyond the pale of responsible dialogue.
Okay.
Right? So, and I think someone coming and saying we should name one. I just did two. Both of which were suppressed, that were not allowed to be discussed in that newspaper, and which you have not really answered my question either. My stand is this, okay? That we do not live in a society in which any speech should or is guaranteed, okay? So. And I also believe, I was sitting on a subway on the way here, right? And I was sitting on a subway in New York City, and I invite all your listeners to come to and sit in a subway station in New York City, where you sit with a cross-section of humanity that is amazing. And I was wondering, and you know what quote came to my mind, right? We believe, right, that all men are created equal. This is a founding
You're starting to lose me. You're starting to lose me here, Mr. Ismaili.
Let me get to it. We believe that all men are created equal. When someone likens people of color to monkeys, that resonates for some people to be beyond the pale of acceptable American values, right? Because if our country is based on the idea that we're all equal, then you cannot, right, have an argument about whether some people are below human. That to me is not something that really belongs in a debate on a campus.
You don't like it, and I don't either, and I think that's an awful sentiment, and I would never defend it. And yet both of us are bound as Americans to defend the right of people to express views that we disagree with, even if we consider them repugnant or wrong. If they are short of inciting imminent violence, we have to say, I disagree with you. Here's the counter case. Here's why you're wrong. Here's why you shouldn't say things like that. But we cannot prevent people from expressing what they believe. That is the essence of our democratic values, the ones you appealed to, and you don't seem to understand that.
So you would stand up for someone who actually wants to recruit for an organization that has said they want to hurt the United States. You would stand up for the right of that person to speak on a college campus. College campuses are not American society. College campuses are specific places where people are debating and talking to each other.
They're debating, except when they disagree with you, in which case you write them out of the protection by saying they're somehow beyond the pale. Now, I'm asked you clearly, what about Gavin McInnes's positions is so far outside the mainstream that it doesn't fall under the First Amendment?
Calling an African American a monkey, that should be on the outside of a sane debate.
Okay.
All right.
I'm not saying
and the point is that if someone like that, the point that I made in the editorial is the Republican students need to bring conservative ideas onto campus. We need to know why there should be the deregulation of Wall Street. We need to have a discussion about why there should be deregulation of environmental regulations.
Are you a conservative? Why is it up to you to define what conservative ideas are?
I believe in real discussion.
But only within your terms.
But the Republican students, instead of bringing that question on campus, they bring someone outside of the pale of any rational discussion who calls,
so I wonder, I'm gonna do
an African American a monkey.
Okay,
that's what the Republican students bring on campus.
Hold on, wait, stop. I don't want to get into a defense of a specific writer's writings, but I would actually challenge you to cite chapter and verse on that. I don't believe he actually said that. If he did, obviously I find that repugnant.
There's a link. I put the link where I got that information. There is a link. I mean, listen, you're asking me for chapter and verse. Is a link to him speaking where he likens an actress, a black American actress, to a monkey. And
well, there's
you know
literally
what? There's
no
some
chance
people,
I would defend something like that. But the point is, I would defend the right of anybody to say something I disagree with, and you ought to too, and especially as a college student, and I think you're still a college student.
I'm a graduate student, and I actually
You're
teach.
a graduate student, you teach, then you're in a world that was created specifically to protect people who have non-mainstream opinion.
A lot of them actually believe in the manosphere, by the way. The manosphere, you know the manosphere.
You made that up?
You realize people have different opinions in there and are different groups and different ideas.
Actually, I did. Face to face with a few of them.
Such as?
Well, Emily Yukis.
She's not there.
Okay. What was his name?
You haven't talked to a single one of them. You don't know what you're talking about. You're slandering people like all of the people that were out here protesting. You don't know what you're talking about.
Actually, I think that if you're going to do this interview that way, and I think that's ridiculous.
Girl, if you're gonna slander people, I'm gonna call you out, and this is me calling you out. So
I am slandering them for their policies of racism. I have read Mike Cernovich's awfulness, and just because you're laughing and wearing a beautiful gown doesn't mean that you are correct. Actually,
right.
I'm
Me
sorry.
having the facts means I'm correct.
I thought there
What
were a
facts
lot
have
of...
you given me? You've asked me a lot of questions, and then when I haven't given something, you say that I'm wrong. But what facts have you actually offered? I just want to know that.
I offered counters to every single time you claimed there was a white supremacist in there.
You offered bullying tactics.
No, I'm asking for you to substantiate your bullying and slander of this group, and you haven't given me one piece of substantial evidence. Not one.
How about Milo Yiannopoulos?
He's not there.
He was actually a featured guest.
He's not
Is
there.
he not there?
I was just in there. He's not there.
Is
You don't know a
He was a
thing.
featured
You
guest.
don't know a thing. No,
he
he's
was
not.
a featured guest.
I was just in there. He's not in there.
That doesn't mean he wasn't a featured guest. Could you actually accurately
I'm a
state?
featured guest at the deplorable.
I know that you are. You're actually the only woman who's actually featured. Because guess what? It's a bunch of dudes. And I do not appreciate that.
Did you just call me a woman? I'm legally a man.
Are you?
Yes.
Do your viewers realize that?
Yes. I did a whole video on it.
You're legally a man?
I am legally a man.
Do you identify as a cis woman or a cis
I'm a
male
man.
or transgender?
I'm a man.
You're a man?
Yes.
Can I interject?